Tonight, we're live in Scotland as Donald Trump's trip continues. The US president's been in a talkative mood, signalling the US is prepared to help humanitarian efforts in Gaza. But there were also some awkward moments for Keir Starmer as well. We'll show you the highlights. At the UN in New York, the two-state solution is top of the agenda, and there's also mounting pressure from MPs at home for the Prime Minister to recognise a Palestinian state. More than 250 have signed a letter calling for him to make the move now. I'll be joined live by one of them. Also tonight, we're live in Downing Street as England's Lionesses are inside right now, meeting the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, after their extraordinary Euros triumph last night. Plus, France's fury at the EU's new trade deal with the US. We'll take you through the reaction on the continent to Brussels' deal with Washington. And look, it's not often the US president struggles for top billing, but we'll show you the moment that Donald Trump was drowned out by his own bagpiper. Cutting through the noise for us tonight, Tom Pursglove and Ava Evans, who'll be with us for the next hour. It's Monday, I'm Sophy Ridge live from Westminster, and this is the Politics Hub. Hello, good evening. Well, before we get going with the politics tonight, the Lionesses are here in Westminster right now after landing in Southend and then heading straight to Downing Street to meet the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. I should say the Prime Minister was busy having dinner with Donald Trump right now, of course. So Angela Rayner is stepping in along with the Sports Minister as well. Big moment, of course, for the Lionesses, but even bigger for Downing Street. All the exciting things, the women of the moment, should say. We can go now to Sky's Ashna Horonag, who's got the job that we all wanted tonight. She's at Downing Street for us. Ashna, what's happening?
Sophie, I'm fangirling. I mean, moments ago, we just saw the bus pull up, the coach itself, and they've received their homecoming in the heart of central London, appearing at Downing Street. They sort of lined up, posed for photographs, lifting that glorious trophy into the air. And as the door of Downing Street swung open, you could just hear the ripple of applause inside. So I'm sure the girls, as they were walking in, were kind of met by rapturous applause as ultimately they're welcomed here not only by Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner, but Stephanie Peacock, a sports minister too. But also there will be representatives from the FA inside, players, coaches, people that have been truly inspired by this team. And it was a real moment just seeing them walking into Downing Street, dressed very smartly considering the long night, but also the long day they've absolutely had. They did that 50-mile journey from Southend Airport after landing back from Switzerland today. And just seeing them with beaming smiles on their faces, dressed to the nines and very, very smart suits. They were just glowing, absolutely ecstatic by their achievement, of course. And actually, when I just sort of shouted at them, because you've got to, you know, when in Downing Street, shouted at them, how were they feeling? Many of them said ecstatic. And you could clearly see that from their faces. You know, this is one of the most publicised, well, the most publicised, the most televised tournament that there is, the most attended to. So to see them finally land in the UK, they can now begin to start their celebrations. And of course, tomorrow will be a huge day for them. As we look ahead, there will be an open-top bus parade starting at the Mall over by Buckingham Palace, and tens of thousands of people, you can already see on social media, are already planning their journeys into London. But it truly has begun, you know, that seeing that Euros trophy, the one that they lifted only last night in those euphoric scenes, seeing that outside Downing Street, I'm sure they'll be definitely being given a hero's welcome.
Yeah, and of course, Ashna, as you're saying, they're right in Downing Street right now, so we're going to bring you all the pictures that we get as soon as we get them after they've done that. I've got to say, I can see behind you all those people taking sneaky selfies by the door. Did you manage to get a picture of yourself with the Lionesses in the background, Ashna? Are you going to give it a go?
Very kindly, Kev the cameraman managed to take a little photograph of me with all the St George's flags in the background. But to be honest, Sophie, I was, as I say, fangirling so much, I didn't take a selfie of them. I just got plenty of pics on my phone.
I love it. That's good, living in the moment. That's what it's all about. I have to say, I am very, very jealous of you tonight. But we'll be coming straight back to you, of course, Ashna, to get the full readout of what went on behind the doors in number 10. Ashna Horinag there for us in Downing Street. And of course, as soon as we get any sign that we've got those pictures from what the Lionesses are up to with Angela Rayner and Stephanie Peacock, we will bring them to you. There is, of course, a very big political meeting going on today as well, with Donald Trump's visit to Scotland. And look, you only get a certain amount of political capital to use with Donald Trump. So you have to choose when to spend it and also what to spend it on. Gaza, Ukraine, trade or tariffs, there are a lot of things clamouring for attention. And for Keir Starmer, Donald Trump's trip to Scotland gives him the opportunity to leverage his influence. And look, with those devastating images of starving children emerging from Gaza, for many people, it's also clear what Keir Starmer should be spending his political capital on as well. Because the Prime Minister is under mounting pressure internationally and domestically to take a tougher line on Gaza, on aid and also on recognising Palestine as a state. Now, today, there were some areas of agreement.
It's a terrible situation. The whole thing is terrible. It's been bad for many years, but it's great to hear you feel the same way that I do. We have to help on a humanitarian basis before we do anything. We have to get the kids fed.
But at other points, it did seem like there was a bit of a difference of tone.
We made a contribution a week ago of $60 million, all going into food. We only hope the food goes to the people that need it, because so much, as you know, when you do something there, it gets taken by Hamas or somebody, but it gets taken.
At the same time, though, I can't help thinking, if anything is going to change as a result of this meeting, we're banking on two things. Firstly, Keir Starmer's influence on Donald Trump over Gaza, and secondly, Donald Trump's influence over Benjamin Netanyahu. And frankly, neither of those two things are certain. Well, our US correspondent James Matthews reports now on the President's visit to Scotland.
On Scotland's west coast, it had the look of friends reunited. When President met Prime Minister, the bagpipes played and stopped for no man, nor news conference.
She is a respected person all over the United States. I don't know what he's doing, but she's very respected. As respected as him. I don't want to say more, I'll get myself in trouble.
It was sweetness and light until it was serious. The music had stopped when both men started to talk Gaza and an escalating crisis.
Those children look very hungry, but we're giving a lot of money and a lot of food, and other nations are now stepping up. I know that this nation is, right?
It's a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
It's an absolute catastrophe. And nobody wants to see that. And I think people in Britain are revolted at seeing what they're seeing on their screens. So we've got to get to that ceasefire. And thank you, Mr. President, for leading on that, and also to just get more and more aid in.
See, Biden didn't have this kind of press. One report.
Trump boasted of a big audience before he delivered big news on Russia. He'd given Vladimir Putin 50 days to reach a peace deal with Ukraine or face sanctions. That has changed.
I'm going to make a new deadline of about 10 or 12 days from today. There's no reason in waiting. There's no reason in waiting.
Following a weekend's golfing, the Monday media appearance saw President in talkative mood. He had previously dismissed questions about his links to Jeffrey Epstein, convicted sex trafficker. Not here. He chose to address the story that he'd sent Epstein the hand-drawn picture of a naked woman.
I'm not a drawing person. I don't do drawings of women, that I can tell you.
And Trump spoke of falling out with Epstein and reiterated that he'd never been to his private island where crimes took place.
He stole people that work for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth. And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times.
This is the seascape to where President Trump travelled next, wind turbines and all. Of that site, he takes a dim view. Not so the golf course up the coast. He flew with the UK Prime Minister to Aberdeenshire's Balmedy estate. He'll end his Scottish trip here, opening a golf course in honour of his late mother.
Mr. Trump, go home!
There was a small anti-Trump protest a short distance from the golf course as Donald Trump headed in their direction. And there was this, a few hundred yards from the shore at Trump's course. A boat sporting a Palestinian flag sped along a stretch of the coastline, followed by the police as they prepared for the president's arrival. It is public protest in contrast to the warmth of Donald Trump's politician hosts. There's no doubt that Trump and Starmer have built a good relationship. What they build on it is the question. The UK's Prime Minister came here looking to stress the urgency of the situation in the Middle East and between Russia and Ukraine. The signs are that the President is listening to a Prime Minister increasingly styled as the Trump whisperer. Away from the public gaze, refining the trade agreement with the US is a priority for Keir Starmer. His vision for a deal is one that doesn't come with a guarantee. The Trump whisperer will be wary of sweet nothings.
Well, in a moment, we'll cross to our political correspondent, Rob Powell. But first, let's get the latest with James Matthews, who's at Trump International Golf Course, where the president has now arrived. James, you've obviously been following and covering Donald Trump for a while now. I'm fascinated by your description of Keir Starmer as the Trump whisperer. How do you think today's gone?
Well, I think, Sophie, and, you know, this business of Starmer becoming his friend, and I think what we're witnessing here is the holiday bromance to consolidate that relationship. He seems comfortable, doesn't he, Donald Trump, in Starmer's orbit. This morning it was interesting, with bagpipes playing. We had the shocker of a president of the United States interrupting a bagpipe recital. That's how the Scottish papers might report it. But yeah, that was a bit awkward, bagpipes. But, Donald Trump praising Lady Victoria, Starmer's wife, talking about her respect around the United States. He was pressing home the friendship aspect of it all. And it's interesting how he talked Epstein. He's been very prickly on that in the United States. Tried a number of different strategies, actually, contacting Republican opinion formers, trying to convince them to dampen it down, then railing against his critics, trying to antagonize them, to silence them. Then he had this strategy of dismissal. It's nothing to do with me, it's ridiculous, it's a hoax. Today, he confronted it head on, comfortable in the company that he kept, sitting side by side with Starmer, answered a few questions, said that his poll figures were up 4.5% since the Epstein affair had blown up, and perhaps that has had lifted the mood more than anything else. Actually, myself, I think, Sophie, you had the Wall Street Journal. It's been a while since we've had a newsline to give this story traction. The last newsline was that hand drawing of the naked woman, which he addressed today, talking about how, I've drawn buildings with straight lines, but I don't draw women. So I think just the general context, he's perhaps comfortable that the story isn't necessarily going anywhere quickly, but the fact that he's here, comfortable in the surroundings, a private holiday, side by side with his new friend, he spoke for about an hour and more, quite happy to deal with subjects on all matters. It's a result for Starmer, I do think, Sophie, and this business of him being the Trump whisperer, I think, speaks to that, the circumstances of it all. Starmer came here looking to stress the situation in the Middle East and the urgency of it all, and also the urgency of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And on both counts, he seems to have got a result, certainly in the way that Donald Trump was talking today, acknowledging the urgency of Gaza, starvation, talking about the need to alleviate the situation, and also leaning more heavily on Vladimir Putin, talking about the 10 and 12 days. Just briefly, Sophie, we have a statement from the White House which illuminates rather what he was talking about in terms of food centres today. When asked to provide more details, the White House are saying this about these food centres. President Trump wants to alleviate the suffering for the people of Gaza because he has a humanitarian heart, they say. He announced a new aid plan to help Gazans obtain crucial access to food. Details are forthcoming. So actually, in terms of the practicalities, maybe not much in that, but stressing that he's giving it his full attention.
James, thank you very much indeed. James Matthews speaking to us there. Well, let's bring in Rob Powell now, shall we, who's in Prestwick for us. Rob, how do you think Keir Starmer got on today? He has been, of course, under pressure to really try and use his influence over Donald Trump when it comes to Gaza in particular.
Well, Keir Starmer ran the gauntlet today, Sophie. He put together that impromptu press conference out the front of Turnberry and then the stuff in the ballroom. There was almost 90 minutes of questions coming from reporters today. On balance, I think it was a win for Keir Starmer. I think what James was saying about the substantive policy issues on Gaza and Russia really, really matter, and Trump's tone and language on that really, really matters. I think the fact that Keir Starmer has spent such a long time with the president matters too. He arrived early afternoon. He's then gone up to Aberdeen. He's having dinner with him this evening. So a full afternoon and evening with the most powerful man on the planet, I think that alone will be chalked up as a win. All of that said, this was definitely the diciest encounter Keir Starmer has had with Trump so far. There were awkward moments. I think the most awkward was probably when Donald Trump talked about the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, called him a nasty person. Keir Starmer chipped in to say, well, actually, he's a friend of mine. But I think beyond that sort of surface level awkwardness, this was really the most visual representation of the political gulf that lies between these two men. Donald Trump said, well, he's slightly more liberal than me when he got to Scotland. Well, that's an understatement. You look at things like green energy. Donald Trump talked about wind turbines killing birds and ruining the landscape. Keir Starmer said, well, we have a mix of energy. He said immigration was killing Europe. Keir Starmer said, well, we are going to come down very hard on people breaking the rules. He just about managed to paper over it, I think, a sort of mix of chuckling along, smiling and sounding eminently reasonable. At times it did sort of have the energy of a man having to grin and bear some inappropriate comments from in-laws at an important family dinner. But hey, it avoided a big Trump implosion at him, so I guess it's worth it. The thing that was most noticeable, though, beyond the kind of political gulf between the two men, though, was the gulf in terms of the power dynamic. And that's not just the sort of visual representation of power when the US president comes to an area, the two presidential jumbo jets at Prestwick Airport, the extra Trump personal jet, the military aircrafts, the police bust in from across the country, quad biking around the beach, cordoning off big parts of the golf courses and huge sections of highway. That is all there and very visual. It's also the fact that Keir Starmer flew the length of the country he leads to be the guest of another world leader at his golf resort, and then sat through 90 minutes of freewheeling questions from journalists, sat next to, most of the time in silence, sat next to a man that most of his party and his voters don't really care for, and then was lectured about how to beat Nigel Farage and indirectly criticised for many of his policies. What did he get out of that? Well, he got important, albeit incremental, comments on big foreign policy issues. He got some warm words. So why does he do it? Well, it's about power. It's about the United States' power in terms of defence, the economy and foreign affairs, and it shows the outsized power the USA still holds, and I guess in comparison, the relative slight of the UK.
Yeah, it's absolutely right, Rob. Very picturesque where you are, I should say. You tempted to go and take a dip a bit later?
Bit chilly, I think, but, you know, never say never.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you very much, Rob Powell, there for us in Prestwick. Right, let's bring in our duo for the evening, shall we? The former Conservative Minister, Tom Pursglove, and the political correspondent at Politics Joe. That is Ava Evans. Great to have you both with us. Ava, what's your take on how today's gone then?
Tricky. I think that the biggest takeaway is how little Trump seemed to know about the UK, or I suppose how little interest he has in UK news. I mean, even when he's talking about immigration, you could tell he hadn't been briefed, or he hadn't chosen to be briefed on the riots that are currently happening outside, or sorry, well, the sort of the protests outside various asylum hotels up and down the country. He was sort of making the argument that Starmer had got it under control, and I think many would say that he doesn't quite have it under control. He also didn't know anything about the Online Safety Act that came in a couple of days ago. And I'm not insinuating that the president should know about these sort of, inner machinations of what's going on with UK politics, but you'd think he might have a broad idea or interest of what was going on. And he seemed actually rather clueless.
It's interesting, isn't it? Often it's a briefing on this stuff as well, isn't it? Tom, what's your take?
Well, look, I think it's really important that the UK Prime Minister has a strong relationship with whoever is in the White House. But there were some really uncomfortable moments in there. I thought the Prime Minister and his wife looked particularly uncomfortable on the steps. And I think in terms of the political knock-on of all of this, is that on the relationship side, where the Prime Minister is really struggling for some credit with colleagues, it won't necessarily have done him a huge amount of favours. For example, the interaction about Sadiq Khan. He should have been in there far quicker to defend his colleague. I think people will be quite surprised about that, and it just represents some of the strained relationships that there feels that there is within the Labour family at the moment. But look, I think it was really welcome that he moved the conversation on Russia and Ukraine, as well as around Gaza. So from a UK perspective, that was a very welcome outcome.
Right, hold that thought, because I'm going to come back to you on all these things as well. But I did just want to go over to the US, because over in New York, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy is going to be attending a two-day United Nations conference to try and push for a two-state solution. We can talk now to David Blevins, our US correspondent. David, what's the latest?
Yes, Sophie, a significant meeting at the UN today with member states discussing their next steps towards a two-state solution. The United States and Israel boycotted that meeting. They said it would undermine efforts to secure peace. But France and Saudi Arabia, who co-chaired the meeting, said actually a two-state solution was the only viable route to the lasting peace that America and Israel say that they are looking for. Now, it comes after France, of course, said it would recognise the state of Palestine. Just last year, Spain, Ireland and Norway did likewise. 145 countries to date have signed up, and there were calls today for others to do likewise. In fact, the former president of Colombia, a former winner of the Nobel Peace Prize and keynote speaker today, said the UK should take the lead on recognising the state of Palestine. So it's going to be very interesting to hear what the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has to say in New York. We expect him to address the General Assembly tomorrow. Overall, though, I think there were two big takeaways. The overall outrage from all member states about the scale of the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza, and also a determination that Israel must not be allowed to veto any two-state solution by simply not turning up for meetings like this. And as James Matthews was saying from Scotland a moment ago, here in the United States at the UN in New York, there is also a very real sense of urgency because of the horrific pictures that we're seeing on our television screens about starving children, particularly in Gaza. So a lot for David Lammy to think about tomorrow and to talk about tomorrow. We'll be listening closely.
Yeah, we certainly will. David, thank you very much indeed. David Blevins reporting for us there. And as David was just saying, back in Westminster as well, the Prime Minister is under increasing pressure to recognise a Palestinian state, with over 250 MPs signing a cross-party letter calling for it as well. Well, we can talk to one of them now, Toby Perkins, the Labour MP for Chesterfield. Thank you very much for being with us. So just explain why you've decided to sign this letter.
Well, it's the policy of the Labour Party to have a two-state solution. I think that there's been sort of ongoing desperation amongst colleagues right across the House about the situation in Gaza. We have Israel leadership is not even open to the idea of a two-state solution. Similarly, Hamas wanting the destruction of Israel. And so neither side are remotely close. But we just think it's important that the Israelis can't be allowed to just continually sort of frustrate any kind of discussion here. And so I think, given Britain's historic role in the creation of Israel, in the politics of the region, and seeing what France and President Macron have said today, we agree with those colleagues who were just hearing about around the world who would like to see Britain signing up to that.
I guess what Keir Starmer's perspective is that he wants this two-state solution, as you acknowledge, but in order to get that, he needs to time it right. So he says that he wants to wait until maximum impact as part of a peace process. I mean, do you think there's any truth to that argument?
I understand what he's saying on that, but realistically, with the sort of prospect of a peaceful, negotiated settlement seems like it's never been further away, and all the time the operation of the Israeli war machine has been, quite outrageous, and many of us who absolutely recognised Israel's right to defend itself after the horrific incidents of October the 7th, continued hostage keeping by Hamas, also absolutely despair of the way that Israel have prosecuted this war. I believe it's gone far beyond the protection of Israeli interests, or even that it's doing anything towards getting those hostages back. And so we think, Israel does have to be put under some pressure to see that the entire world is desperate for this aid to go in, but really serious about having some kind of long-term negotiated peaceful settlement.
I'm interested to hear your take on the meeting with Donald Trump today, because obviously if there's anyone who is going to bring pressure in the region, it is the US president. Do you think Keir Starmer has gone far enough in trying to use his political capital on persuading Donald Trump to do more when it comes to that war?
I think it sounds like it's gone wonderfully. I think that Tom Persclough was sort of generous in recognising that Keir Starmer is acting in the British interest, sometimes at the expense of personal popularity, but he recognises Britain needs to have a strong relationship with America, and it sounds like the influence that he's having is a very positive one. What we heard from the president, not only on Gaza, but also on Russia and Ukraine, absolutely ties in with what it appears Keir Starmer was attempting to achieve. So, I think from the perspective of that meeting today, it's been a complete success. But it is also important that we, continue to see Israel given some real sort of pressure to let the aid in, and more seriously to start with some kind of negotiation towards what ultimately has to be a peaceful future for a viable Israeli state and a viable Palestine.
You mentioned there Keir Starmer and his kind of personal popularity when it comes to Donald Trump, and I just wonder what your take is on Labour's overall position when it comes to Gaza. Do you think that if it is felt by many Labour voters that Keir Starmer hasn't done enough, that he hasn't been strong enough, could it lose you votes? Could it even cost you the next election?
I think some people massively overstate the influence that we're able to have in this area. I think that Keir Starmer's done a good job of trying to provide that forward positive pressure whilst continuing to... So I think I've lost you, Sophie.
Apologies. There is anger, though, it's fair to say, isn't there, among many Labour voters over Gaza?
I think that, for many Labour voters, they will, they are just desperate to see change in Palestine, and I think they overstate the influence that Britain can have. But I think that Keir Starmer has been attempting to take the global community with him, whilst trying to bring pressure on Israel and on Hamas to release the hostages in an almost impossible situation when there's two sides that don't seem to want peace.
Thank you very much indeed. It's great to have you on the programme and to hear your perspective. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Right, let's bring in Tom and Ava again, shall we? Tom, little name check for you there.
Yes, cross-party agreement.
Yeah, there you go. On Gaza, and it is such a difficult... I mean, it goes without saying, doesn't it? It's a despairingly difficult issue. Where do you think the UK government can play a role, if at all?
I actually think that the Prime Minister and the government are absolutely right on the sequencing point, because what you don't want to have here is gesture politics that doesn't move the conversation along. And we've seen 147 countries recognise the state of Palestine, but it hasn't brought about a durable, meaningful peace. It hasn't seen the hostages released. It hasn't seen that mutual recognition, which is so important in securing that lasting peace. So for me, I think what needs to happen, and as you touched on when you were questioning Toby Perkins, actually the President of the United States got a massive role to play here in terms of trying to get people around the table to move the conversation on and to actually secure some substantive progress. I think that this recognition point of Palestinian statehood needs to come at the right moment. And I think that the government at the moment, despite that backbench pressure, is right in really putting that front and centre.
Ava, what do you think?
Well, I think that most backbench Labour MPs would argue that the first thing that the government could do is to halt supplying weapons to Israel during this time. You know, I mean, for 2 years now, there's been arguments over the arms export licences, and the government have said that they continue to use them, you know, within the realms of international law. I think that there is possibly fair enough evidence, certainly from a few civil servants that I have personally spoken to inside the Foreign Office, who don't believe that they are being used in accordance with international law. And I think a review of that, you know, it's probably overdue. Probably, it definitely is overdue. You know, Toby Perkins there talking about the Labour government not having, not really having power, Britain not having power on the world stage. It sounds weak. I think there will be people at home who listen to that and they know that that is just it's a barefaced cover-up, because Labour MPs, unfortunately, have been too frightened to halt or to speak up before now. And, you know, Sarah Champion's letter is it's very strong, and the signatories, you know, getting 220 cross-party is very strong. Is it too little, too late? Quite possibly, and I think that is how the electorate will see it.
What about the Conservatives? What do you make of Kemi Badenoch's position on all this?
I just think we've been really consistent, both in government and now in opposition, around this focus on a two-state solution. I think that we are absolutely right as a party to put the hostages and the appalling atrocities that happened on the 7th of October at the forefront of the policy thinking that we've had around this consistently. But it's impossible for anybody not to be massively troubled by the scenes that we've seen, that appalling starvation. It's just horrific, like, isn't it?
Because I think, and I understand what you're saying about the consistency of position, but I guess some people would say that the situation has changed over the last however long this war has been going on for, right? And October the 7th was something that is going to live with all of us as this unspeakable tragedy, and a changing the dial, and many would say existential for Israel. But when you look at the starvation pictures, it's fair that a position would change given the evidence, right?
So I agree, and I think that's why getting the aid in is so important in the first instance, but also trying to get people round the table to get to a much more durable place that can bring about a long-term peace, because there's no good coming from this current situation. It can't carry on. It is intolerable.
Do you think that they're getting the aid in line? Sort of, it almost sounds a little bit like a platitude at this point, because I think it's quite an easy get-out, isn't it, for many, you know, particularly for Starmer. The language that he used today, actually, in front of Donald Trump was very interesting. He said that the images were revolting that were coming out of Gaza. And I think that's the strongest terms he's ever used. He said there was a sense of revulsion amongst the British public. For the solution to that to be, we need to get aid in and we're going to do it via airdrop, do you think that the British public are buying that?
I think you've got to move on that so quickly, just because of the gravity of the suffering that we're seeing. The pictures are horrific. Nobody of any right mind wants to see that happening in our world. But also we do need to quickly pivot into genuinely trying to get people around the table to move this whole thing on and to get to that durable peace, because that's the only way that you're going to put a stop to that suffering long term.
Ava, what would you say on the two-state solution issue? Because Keir Starmer is obviously saying this is what we want to happen, but there's no point calling it for it now because you've got to get the timing right and there's got to be involved in another part of a wider deal.
I mean, the mechanisms of that would be much better suited to a foreign affairs journalist, but certainly amongst long-standing Labour MPs who far precede the last election. You know, this was voted upon in 2014 is their position. It was, in their opinion, promised to them in the Labour manifesto that was passed last year. And many Labour MPs feel very frustrated. And I think this is where you're going to see parties like Jeremy Corbyn's potential party, your party, scooping up votes. You know, Toby Perkins there saying that this isn't really going to have a potential impact on how people vote. I mean, look at the last election. You know, you nearly lost Ilford, where Wes Streeting, the health secretary, nearly lost to Liam Mahmood. Mohammed. You know, you've got plenty of other MPs who scooped up votes purely on the Gaza issue. Either Labour MPs are lying or they're just simply out of touch.
It's really interesting. Thanks both very much indeed. Ava and Tom, we'll have more from you throughout the programme. Well, of course, the situation in Gaza that we've just been discussing, and also Donald Trump's visit to the UK, sure to feature In tomorrow's papers, we'll have our extended press preview from 10:30 this evening with tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us will be the Times' chief political correspondent Aubrey Allegretti and the former Conservative Special Advisor Sam Shah. You're watching the Politics Hub. Coming up. EU leaders give Donald Trump's deal with the bloc a less than warm reception as the US president talks up Starmer's negotiating skills. We're going to be talking trade next.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Welcome back. Well, Donald Trump may be calling it the biggest deal ever made, but as the dust settles on his trade agreement with the EU, not everyone is so happy. Donald Trump and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced over the weekend that America will impose 15% tariffs on most EU goods, which is lower than the 30% that was originally threatened, but of course still higher than the 10% that Britain managed to lock in. Well, praise for the deal hasn't exactly been fulsome.
I've always said the same thing, and I value the effort made by the European Commission. I value the constructive and negotiating attitude of the President of the European Commission, and in any case, I support this trade agreement, but I do so without any enthusiasm.
Meanwhile, the French Prime Minister François Bayrou posted on X to say, "It's a dark day when an alliance of free peoples brought together to affirm their common values and to defend their common interests resigns itself to submission." Not exactly a effusive praise there. And here is also some reaction from the trading floor in Germany.
The clear winner is Donald Trump. This was already evident. Donald Trump succeeded by using his usual tactic of hitting hard first and then conceding. This tactic has prevailed once again, and one must congratulate Donald Trump on his negotiation skills.
Well, I guess all of this does perhaps cast a bit of positive light on the UK's deal with the US, with the President himself today talking up the Prime Minister's efforts.
You've done a fantastic job with regard to the trade deal. You know, they wanted a trade deal here for years, many years, through many different terms of different people, and you got it done, so I want to congratulate you on that, and it's a great It's a great deal for both. It brings unity. We didn't need unity, but it brings us even closer together, I think. It's good for both parties.
Well, let's chat again to Tom and Ava, shall we? So, Ava, what do you reckon? Is this a kind of big Brexit benefit?
That is how Jonathan Reynolds would like us to perceive it, and I think the rest of the Labour cabinet are pretty pleased. Look, I mean, you'll never know, if the UK had stayed a part of the EU, if perhaps Starmer could have used his fantastic negotiating power to secure a better deal for the entirety of the EU, and you also have to weigh up with the losses that have been that we've had from not being able to trade with our closest trading partner. I mean, as the OBR has predicted, it's wiped off around 4% of our GDP. That's rather disappointing. The US tariffs are actually rather negligible compared to that.
Tom, you've been very, I guess, kind of cross-party.
Yeah, maybe that'll change.
Yeah, is that going to change now? What does this show how great Keir Starmer's deal was then?
Well, I would argue that actually Keir Starmer wouldn't have been able to get to that 10% position relative to the EU's 15% if it weren't for the abilities that Brexit has given him to be able to take that position. So I welcome that as a Brexit benefit. Look, there's a mixed picture here, isn't there? And I don't like trade distortions. I think that the Trump administration has taken the wrong approach on tariffs. But it's been really interesting to hear some of the EU reaction, those various leaders. Viktor Orban, for example, being very critical today, but also the French Prime Minister raising real concerns. And you look at, for example, aviation parts, that's zero tariffs in both directions. Pharma, it's unclear where they've landed on that. But also in other areas, perhaps not made the run-in that they hope to make. So, for example, around automotives, they've made progress, but a lot of the big automobile companies really not very happy still. So a long way to go. And rather like some of the agreements that this government has managed to secure in recent months, it still seems that it's almost a checkpoint along the way to say that we've got agreement to have a further conversation.
It's the certainty, like you say, or the uncertainty, as you were saying as well. And I guess that is underlined by just how keen the EU were to get any kind of deal over the line, right?
Well, as you would be. I mean, it's a similar situation as what we had here with Jaguar Land Rover. You're facing the prospect of 3,000 job losses. Yeah. You've got to sign whatever you can. And the people who were in that factory, I'm sure, were rather grateful. But, it all stems back to that comment that Trump made. I mean, what was it, a year ago now? It might not even be that long ago, where, you go to the centre of Berlin.
I'm going to have to jump in because we are having the Lionesses on the road of Downing Street. And there's Larry the Cat as well. Wouldn't be a Downing Street live shot, would it, without Larry the Cat there as well. But Downing Street, of course, hosting that victory reception for the victorious Lionesses alongside Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, and also the Sports Minister, Stephanie Peacock. And look, they are, of course, absolutely right for them to try and make the very, very most of all of the accolades that will be coming their way as well. Keir Starmer, of course, would have loved to be here for the big moment, I'm sure, as well, but he's otherwise engaged meeting Donald Trump, of course. They have been hosted by the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, and the Sports Minister, Stephanie Peacock, as well. Sarina Wiegman, their triumphant team defending their European title last night, which means that they are the first English team to win a major tournament on foreign soil. Let's bring in Ashna Harinag, who's at Downing Street for us. Ashna, what's happening?
Well, Sophie, I have just been shouting at the Lionesses, which is why you couldn't quite hear me, or rather why I wasn't quite speaking to you. But the girls have just come out of Downing Street and slinked off to the side. Clearly that reception running into sort of 40 minutes or so since they last went in there. I sort of was asking them, how was it? Are you excited for tomorrow? And I think it was Leah that answered first, and Leah Williamson, and she was saying, yeah, it was really good. And one of them was carrying the trophy. And they all looked pretty sprightly, actually, considering they've had quite an evening of it and quite a day of it. We know inside they were meeting Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner. She didn't come outside, actually. She clearly was wanting to let the Lionesses have their moment. The person that hasn't come outside, though, just having a little look, is Serena Wiegmann. We've not actually seen her pop out yet, so maybe she's having a bit of a conversation inside with the representatives from the FA that are also there alongside players and coaches who have come down to meet the girls. But you've also had, as the coach pulled in, lots of the crowd, members of the public, clearly aware of their arrival, and they were really excited by seeing the coach itself, and as some of the girls were stepping off it, they were waving in anticipation of tomorrow, which is when the big parade is due to happen, of course. That bus starting at the Mall, going down into Buckingham Palace. And actually, I can just hear outside the corner of my eye, I can sort of see the gathering of the girls and hearing some of those cheers as clearly members of the public have hung around Downing Street, clearly just catching a glimpse of them just before the celebrations continue tomorrow.
You see, this is the thing, Ashna. I'm kind of slightly gutted that we haven't got more pictures of them at Downing Street right now, but in some ways it is probably completely right and fitting that their first instinct was to go and actually talk to the fans. You know, those boys and girls, men and women, members of the public who were absolutely desperate to get their moment with the Lionesses, the triumphant Lionesses. We're looking at those pictures now of them holding the trophy, posing for those pictures as well. Serena Wiegmann there alongside so many of those familiar faces, the legends themselves. Ashna, how do they look? Do they look absolutely exhausted when you saw them?
I want to say they looked exhausted, and some of the other journalists are saying, oh, they look quite knackered, don't they? But actually, I genuinely thought they looked pretty sprightly, considering clearly that euphoria of yesterday is still kind of on their minds. They look very sharp, very sleek in their matching sort of cream and black suits. And as they were all coming out, you know, members of the press couldn't stop themselves too. They're also very excited by seeing them. And what I can see behind us, so have a look, there's some of the team there. Clearly have gone on a bit of a loop, a bit of dancing there from the girls. Oh, some of them taking selfies outside of the front door. I don't want to scream because those in the gallery might have a bit of a heart attack if I scream on my microphone. But I just
go
want
for
to,
it. It's fine. You've got my permission.
This is some of the team. These are some of the team. These are some of the players, not the players themselves, but this is some of the coaching team that have been surrounding the girls for so long. And of course, Serena always says, doesn't she? This is the team. This is what they're about. But she keeps talking about the team, and they're posing for photos now. So I just want to see if I can. I just want to wait for Serena to come out because I think it would be great to see her. Because we haven't seen her. We've seen a lot of the players obviously going out. I can see Serena in the back with her glasses on. She's making her way to the front now.
Yeah, there she is.
Serena, how was it? Serena, how was it? Yeah. What did Angela say to you? Congratulations. Right. Amazing. What did Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner say to her? She said, congratulations. I'm sure they exchanged a fair number of words whilst they were in there. So this, from just seeing them, obviously, we're used to seeing them in their kits, aren't we? This is some of the coaching team, clearly those that have been a part of this success for such a long time. You know, these are the players that have dealt with injury. These are the people that have dealt with the players' injuries, dealt with their kind of well-being, mental health. And them also part of this, because Serena always talks about the fact that this is a team effort that's got them here, and whilst the players will want to remember that this is also, you know, not only about their success, it's not only about the woman there right in the centre of this celebration, but it's also about the people around these girls that have led to their huge success over the past few years. I mean, let's remember, this is their second Euros win. Oh, bit of a chair there. Bit of a cheer there for the team.
Oh, I love it. And as you say, you know, Ashna, it's about the individual raw talent and skill of some of those players like Chloe Kelly and everyone else as well. But this team, it feels to me, has just got this winning mentality that has come from that woman there on your screens right now, Serena Wiegmann. She really has got something, that X factor, that quality, and the people around them now as well, the full squad. And I guess now it's going to be all about, you know, the way that they've somehow managed to take these women, these young women, these girls, the raw talent they have, and then make them something even bigger than that, making them a champions, making them a winning side as well. And Ashley, you managed to talk to her. I'm going to be jealous of her now.
I'm very ecstatic that I've managed to talk to her. I'm going to keep an eye on her because she's currently talking to some of our other colleagues, so I'm going to try and grab her as we go and maybe do a bit of a conversation with her. But you can see her wearing her gold medal, and plenty of them were doing so as they came off the coach. They were kind of surrounded by, as you just saw, the people that have helped them get there. I mean, they always talk about sort of improving their game, but even by 1%. Okay, great one. We're just from Sky. I would love to speak to her. We're live at the moment. If that's just for a little question. Is that okay? Just one. Thank you so much. Let's fingers crossed. Did you see a bit of that? Bit of that negotiation, Sophie.
You've got the inside track on your persuasive powers there.
In the meantime, they did say they've already spoken to Sky Sports News. But I said, you know, with Sky News, just one question. Maybe we can get a couple in there.
They can't say no to you. That was something else. That was watching the magic in action.
Surely not. Surely not. They can't say no. But, you know, when you've got such a momentous occasion such as this and a squad that have clearly waited for so long to get to this point, to have a homecoming win like this, and hearing from the woman that's made that happen, you know, there is such a sense of national pride, I think, not only from last night, but it continues into today, and tomorrow will be a huge part of that celebration. And this is a woman that made it happen, of course not on her own, the team that have been part of it, but also those girls themselves. You mentioned it there, Sophie, but, you know, we were watching Chloe Kelly last night, people like Leah Williamson leading a squad like this. And then you've got those kind of new up-and-coming players who had this as their first Euros. And so to think that this is sort of the shaping that she's had to do, Serena Wienman, over the past 2 years, ever since that sort of last Euros win. I'm hoping she's just going to come over. I'll stop talking. Serena, such an honour. Hello. Thank you so much for bearing with my screams. Thank you. And huge congratulations. I just want to ask you, I suppose, how you're feeling, and it must be such a long day, long night. Talk to me about what it was like inside today.
Yeah, very, very special. You know, Downing Street 10, you don't come there normally. So, of course, the number's really nice, and how they build it up like this is very, very special. To being able to go inside, but also be in the garden there, really, really nice. The people really nice, of course. Yeah, also they put up some pictures of us that show what we had done in the Euros. Yeah, lovely, a very warm welcome. It was very, very special.
Are you feeling the love today?
Yeah. Oh, I felt love all over, but today even more.
And finally, I know you're due to meet the royal family at some stage, perhaps the squad. A lot of people on social media are calling for a damehood for you. Is that something you'd welcome?
Well, I haven't thought about that. Well, I don't think about it, of course. Well, I feel so much respect from England and from the royal family too. And I think that's the most important thing. And yeah, feeling valued, and it's very special to get so much respect from England.
Serena, how on earth have you managed to do this with England, also the Netherlands, win 3 European championships? So many people are in awe of you. How have you managed to do it?
I don't know. For me, it feels very surreal too. I'm just doing my best every single day and trying to bring people together. I have so much quality around me, and yeah, it needs to sink in.
Oh, what a moment. And finally, were there plenty of drinks and snacks available inside? What was it like?
Oh, of course, yes. Yeah. But yeah, there were some speeches, and it was really nice to be there. Some nice snacks and some nice drinks, and yeah, it was lovely.
Will it be plenty of celebrating tonight or a bit of a rest for the girls?
I don't know. We'll see. I think
tomorrow's a big day.
Yeah, tomorrow a big day. That's going to be really special too. So we'll see tomorrow.
More partying, I'm sure. Serena.
A little bit more. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Enjoy it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Well, that was quite nice, wasn't it? We heard from the captain herself. I mean, the manager herself. I mean, what a moment. I mean, Sophie, I told you about an hour ago that I was a massive fangirl. I was trying to really keep it together, but we heard there, didn't we?
You did really well.
Thanks, Sophie. But we heard that. Drinks, snacks. She said she was umming and ahhing a bit over the partying. Plenty more tomorrow, I'm sure, for the girls. But look, they all seemed, as I keep saying, sort of not as not as tired perhaps as some people may think, considering the last social media post I saw from some of them was about 4 a.m. in the morning. But as we heard there, from the woman that made it happen, 3 times over, once for the Netherlands, twice now with England. When I asked her what the secret was, she said, I simply don't know.
Yeah. Ashna, there's another really, there's another one kind of point I want to make on the back of the story. Because look, I don't know about you, but I'm a big football fan. I love watching football. Sheffield Wednesday my team, but I've never played it. And I feel like the sporting opportunities available to me as a young girl are just nothing like they are for the new generation. And this is why, honestly, I find it quite emotional watching these women. And I just think it's amazing. And I think there's trailblazers in a way that perhaps it is important for us to recognise. I mean, you're a lot younger than me, Ashton. I don't know what you think, but...
Oh, you know how to get me, don't you? When you said that you feel quite emotional about it. I'm totally there with you. I have to say, I wasn't very sporty at school, and I would have loved to have seen such inspirational women playing at this sort of level with athletes at this level, and there were when I was at school, but perhaps the opportunities weren't always there. In some parts of the country, you still hear about how there are young girls playing alongside boys at that stage because there aren't enough girls interested in football, so they're having to merge the teams. And in fact, I don't get this wrong, but I think it was Alicia Russo that's among some of them that had to play a mixed genders team. But now, certainly her club, where we spoke to some of the players at her old club in Maidstone this morning, now the demand is huge, and there are already single-sex teams because there are simply so many girls waiting to play and wanting to be part of history. And, you know, it's not only young girls, it's also young boys. I was hearing some of the interviews with some of the players this morning, and they were talking about how even some of the people in the crowd, there were young boys that were tearing up at the sight of England winning last night. But what a moment in history, and long may the celebrations continue for this squad.
Yeah, totally. Well, these are the latest pictures there from the garden. This is the Downing Street garden there. You can see Angela Rayner there chatting to the legend herself, who needs no introduction at all, the tournament winner, one of the greatest coaches there, having a little drink there with Angela Rayner. I just want to bring Tom and Ava back in. Ava, I honestly, it feels like quite a big moment. I don't know what you think about it all.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was great. I really, really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it, the entire cup. I mean, last night, the penalties, they were excellent, but also they've given us, it's been so much fun, because I know you don't want it to get down to the wire and watch penalties every single time. But for them to win most of their matches on penalties, if you like nail biting, this was perfect for it.
Yeah. Tom, what did you make of it all? Are you a football fan yourself? Or?
My heart was in my mouth. I mean, it was, really sort of, the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations of it. But as you say, how inspiring for young girls across the country to be able to see these young women putting all the effort in, succeeding, really positive role models. Really struck me, actually, in the interviews that they did after their win, just their love of our country. And I just think what a brilliant unifying thing that's happened, and I wish them every success. Fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, with all the social media pressures, body image pressures of being a teenage girl, I just think this is just, I couldn't love it anymore. We are out of time, very sadly. It's been great to have you both on the programme today. And of course, there'll be an awful lot more coverage of the Lionesses and the victory parade they've been enjoying today, coming up on the UK Tonight as well. I'll see you tomorrow. And of course, I should say as well, we've got the parade tomorrow too. So that is one not to miss as well.